Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Years ago, during my clinical internship at the VA hospital, I worked with a man who had spent most of his adult life in prison. When he was finally released, he was terrified. The freedom that you and I live with every single day was just too much for him. He wanted to go back to prison, where he felt safe, where he felt secure. Outwardly, I was very kind with him, but inwardly, I was shocked. I couldn't believe he wanted to go back to prison. In this episode, we're going to explore why human beings are so deeply wired to choose familiar misery over the terrifying unknown, and how to finally step out of the invisible cages we built for ourselves. The man at the VA hospital was young, I would guess around 30 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him, but the outside world lacked the rigid, predictable structure of his cell. He had become institutionalized. He knew the rules of his cage. He knew when to eat, when to sleep, and who the threats were. For him, freedom meant having to make choices, and because his heart hadn't become completely bitter, he still cared for other people, and he didn't want to hurt anyone during his freedom. So that responsibility was paralyzing. At that time, I was still young to my practice as a psychologist, so his words just shocked me. But over the years, I learned we often prefer a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven. So why do so many of us often fear the open door? It's because of the familiarity principle. The human brain loves predictability. Predictability feels like safety to our nervous systems, even if the predictable thing is actively causing us pain. It's because of the illusion of control. In a miserable situation, we at least know the script. When we step into the unknown, true freedom, we have zero control over what happens next. Our egos hate and fear this void. So how does this behavior create everyday cages for us in our lives? Have you ever known anyone in a toxic relationship? When I was growing up, one of my relatives on my father's side, we'd go visit them. My parents got along pretty well, so I wasn't used to what I saw when I went to my relative's house. They fought, and they fought a lot, and sometimes it was intense, but it never once crossed their minds that they should get divorced or end the relationship. They stayed together until finally one of them passed. So though constant arguing is obviously painful, if it's the only dance you know, you step into it. Leaving means facing the terrifying freedom of being alone. Or how about the people out there that have soul-crushing jobs? The boss doesn't respect you, but the paycheck is predictable. Quitting means facing the open door of financial uncertainty. Or what about the prison of our identity? Being the anxious one or the victim is a known identity. If we heal, who are we? Healing requires stepping into an unknown version of ourselves. I want to share 3 beautiful stories of real-life escapes from the cage. A few years ago, I visited Auschwitz in Poland, an incredibly sobering experience. One of the few people who survived this horrific experience was Dr. Edith Eger. Though she escaped, for years she lived in a mental prison of trauma, survival guilt, and secrecy. It was a familiar pain, but it kept her from truly living. Her journey spans from a 16-year-old ballerina sent to a concentration camp to a world-renowned psychologist when she was able to shift her core mentality away from the mental prison she had created while in Auschwitz. Hours after her parents were murdered, she was forced to dance in front of the leaders of Auschwitz. Her mother, on the way to Auschwitz in the cattle car, told her, "No one can take away from you what you put in your mind." So when she danced, she closed her eyes and imagined she was dancing at the Budapest Opera House. When she left Auschwitz, she realized that by staying angry and stuck in the past, she was staying a prisoner even though the barbed wires were gone. Later she wrote, "The worst prison is not the one the Nazis put me in. The worst prison is one I built for myself." Later she would teach that forgiveness isn't about letting the perpetrators off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of hate. She returned 35 years later after exorcising the ghosts. She eventually learned to forgive the one person she found the hardest to forgive, herself. Have you ever heard of the story of Tina Turner escaping from a domestic prison? She spent 16 years in a brutally abusive marriage. Her husband, Ike Turner, controlled her money, her career, and her safety. Her breaking point came on July 1st, 1976. The couple were in Dallas for a tour. During the ride from the airport to their hotel, Ike began beating her. For the first time in their marriage, Tina fought back. Later, she reported thinking, "This is it. I'm not taking it anymore." They reached her hotel covered in blood and bruises. Tina waited until Ike fell into a deep sleep and realized this was her only window of opportunity. With no money and no plans, Tina slipped out of the hotel room. With just a mobile gas card and 36 cents in her pockets, she fled. She ran across the interstate in the middle of the night, dodging semi-trucks in order to reach a hotel across the street. When she got there, she told the clerk, "I'm Tina Turner. My husband and I had a fight. I don't have any money, but if you give me a room, I'll pay you back." Thankfully, the manager recognized her and gave her the room, and this marked the first night of true safety for her. After 16 years, then she had to escape the second prison through the legal battles. She knew if she fought Ike for money or property, he would use the legal system to keep her trapped in his orbit for years. So in 1978, the divorce was finalized. She gave up everything, her shares of her properties, the rights to her joint music, and all of their savings. But on one condition, she told the judge she only wanted one thing, the right to keep her stage name, Tina Turner. The result was she walked away from a massive debt from the canceled tour dates, but she was legally free. But her escape didn't immediately lead to stardom. For several years, Tina lived on food stamps and cleaned houses while performing in small cabaret shows to pay off some of the debts Ike had left behind. It took her nearly 8 years of grinding before in 1984, her release of Private Dancer turned her into a global icon at the age of 44, an age the industry considered her past her prime. From her domestic prison, she built one of the greatest solo careers in history. Having nothing in freedom is better than having everything in a cage. Some people even have to escape from ideological prisons. If you want to read a beautiful story, I would suggest looking into Tara Westover, the author of Educated. This is a memoir of her life growing up on a mountain with radical survivalist parents. The mountain was dangerous, but it was predictable. Leaving it meant risking the loss of her entire family and worldview. She in detail describes what it cost her to leave this dysfunctional family. She suffered from panic attacks and grief, but ultimately claiming ownership over her own mind and earning a PhD from Cambridge. So if we find ourselves in any type of cell right now, how do we begin to step out of our cell? The first thing we have to do is acknowledge the cage. We have to be brutally honest about where we are staying just because it's familiar. We have to ask ourselves, if I weren't already in this situation, would I choose to enter it today? Next, we have to prop the door open, often through small steps. We don't have to run into the wilderness all at once. Take one small step, have one difficult conversation, apply to one job. By doing this, we'll build our freedom tolerance. And then thirdly and lastly, we have to grieve the familiar. Acknowledge that leaving a bad situation still involves loss. We will be losing our predictable routine. It's okay to feel disoriented. That disorientation is a feeling of growth. I only watched a few of the episodes, but I remember one episode from the series Lucifer. In the series, Lucifer is the devil from hell, but he's actually here on planet Earth pretending to be a human. During the episode I saw, he talked about how there's one thing about hell that no one realizes. People are put in cages, but the doors aren't locked. This is a profound truth. The doors to our cells have been unlocked this entire time. The only thing keeping us inside is a fear of the open sky. Before I end, some of the listeners may be thinking, well, Dr. Puff, I've never been in prison. I don't struggle with these type of things. But is that necessarily true? How many of us are in situations where we do things because that's what our friends expect of us, even though we know it isn't really good for us? Let's say we grew up with a group of friends who like to, on weekends, party and have a good time. And we're realizing it's time for us to let that go. We don't like it. We don't like the feelings of it. And we'd rather do other things. But we're afraid. We're in a cage where if we leave, we'll lose our friends. And to be honest, this may be true. So even though the things we're doing with our friends are harmful for us in the long run, we stay with them out of the fear of the unknown. What will happen if we don't have these friends anymore? Who will we hang out with? Who will we do things with? Or what if we have a job that's paying our bills, we're getting by, but we really don't like it? It isn't feeding our soul. And there's so many other career options we'd like to consider, maybe even work towards, but we stay. Our cage may not be a prison cell, but we often fear the open door. Maybe it's time to open that prison door and leave and say, I embrace the discomfort of the unknown. I choose the terrifying beauty of freedom over the safety of my familiar pain. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to www.happinesspodcast.org. That's happinesspodcast.org. Until next time, accept what is, love what is.